Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that I think almost every English learner has struggled with at some point. You know that moment when you know the words, you understand almost everything, but the second you try to speak, your mind just freezes?
Oh, yes, I know that feeling so well, and it's one of the most frustrating parts of learning English. You can read books, watch movies without subtitles, even write essays, but when it comes to speaking, somehow your brain decides to put up a wall.
Exactly. And today, we're going to talk about why that happens, and more importantly, how to stop overthinking and start speaking English with real confidence, even if you've felt stuck for years.
One thing I notice is that learners focus too much on perfect English. They constantly ask themselves, did I say that correctly? Did I use the right word? Was my sentence too long? And every time they do, it actually kills confidence instead of helping.
Yes, you can know every grammar rule, but if your brain is worrying about every single word, your speech will never feel smooth or confident.
And it's not just grammar, right? Timing, pacing, phrasing, all of these play a huge role. Some learners speak too quickly because they're afraid of forgetting what to say, and others pause so long that the conversation feels awkward. Both extremes make you look less confident.
Exactly. One tip I give learners is this. Ask yourself, if a native speaker made the same small mistake, would anyone even notice? Most of the time, the answer is no. Small errors are part of normal conversation. They don't ruin your credibility.
Totally. And here's another thing. Confidence in English isn't about sounding native. It's about being clear, calm, and intentional. You don't have to sound like a perfect TV anchor to be confident. What matters is your tone, your pacing, and the way you structure your thoughts.
Exactly. And we'll be breaking down a few practical ways to do this today. Strategies you can use in meetings, social interactions, and everyday situations. We'll also go through examples that show how small adjustments can make a huge difference.
And before we go further, I want to say something important. Overthinking is completely normal. Almost every learner experiences it. But the good news is, it's manageable once you understand why it happens and how to redirect your focus.
Absolutely. Today, we'll start with why overthinking happens, then move into actionable strategies, and finally show examples of these strategies in real-life conversations. By the end, you'll have a roadmap for speaking English confidently without freezing up.
Yes. And one quick tip, even before we dive in, if you feel nervous right now, just take a deep breath. Pause, center yourself, and remember that speaking English is about communication, not perfection. That mindset alone can change the way your voice sounds.
All right, let's start by exploring why overthinking blocks your confident English, and what's really happening in your brain when you feel stuck mid-sentence.
So let's dig deeper into why overthinking happens. From my experience, it's mostly a combination of fear and expectation. Learners are afraid of making mistakes, afraid of being judged, and afraid of sounding silly. And the more you focus on those fears, the more your brain goes into a loop. Should I say this? Did I say that right? What if I mess up?
Exactly. It's almost like your brain is trying to do three things at once: thinking about grammar, choosing the right words, and monitoring your tone. And when it tries to do all three at the same time, it ends up doing none of them very well. That's why your speech feels slow, hesitant, or awkward.
Yes. And one of the biggest effects I see is unnatural pauses. People stop mid-sentence because they're overthinking, and then they notice the pause, and suddenly they're even more nervous. Ironically, that pause makes you look less confident than if you just kept going.
Exactly. And there's also what I call the perfect sentence trap. Learners think every sentence has to be flawless before it leaves their mouth, so they polish internally and freeze. Meanwhile, in normal conversations, Nobody expects perfection. Native speakers make small mistakes all the time, and the conversation continues smoothly.
Totally. That's why I always tell learners focus on clarity and intent. Ask yourself, am I being understood? Am I expressing my idea? Not, is my grammar perfect? Did I choose the exact right word?
Right. Another common pattern is over-preparing, especially for work situations or meetings. Learners rehearse lines in their head, but when the pressure is on, they forget them, or they translate directly from their native language. Both create a huge mental load and feed overthinking.
And overthinking also shows up in body language. You hunch, speak quietly, avoid eye contact. Even if your words are correct, listeners sense hesitation. Overthinking is as much physical as it is mental.
Exactly. And the cycle is vicious. You overthink. Pause awkwardly. Notice the pause. Overthink even more. It feeds on itself. Many learners blame a lack of skill, when in reality, it's just their brain being overactive under pressure.
Right, and understanding this cycle is the first step to breaking it. Once you see why it happens, you can start using practical strategies, prepared phrases, softeners, intentional pauses, turning statements into questions. All of these help your brain focus on communication instead of perfection.
And one more thing, recognize that overthinking is normal. Every learner experiences it. What separates confident speakers is not perfection, but the ability to act despite that overthinking.
Exactly. And in the next chapter, we'll go through specific strategies to stop overthinking in the moment, including mental tricks, verbal techniques, and small daily habits you can start practicing right away.
All right, let's move on to the solutions. These strategies are what transform hesitant speakers into calm, confident communicators. All right, now that we've talked about why overthinking happens, let's get into practical strategies that actually work. These are tools you can start using today to speak English more confidently, no matter your level.
Yes. And the first strategy is preparing key phrases in advance. You don't need to memorize long sentences, just patterns that give you a starting point. For example, in a meeting, you could use, I think we could try, would it be possible to, or could we consider? These small phrases give your brain a safe place to start.
Exactly. And the beauty of this approach is that it's flexible. You can use the same pattern in many situations. Over time, your brain starts producing variations naturally, without you having to think too hard. This reduces the pressure to create perfect sentences on the spot.
Another huge strategy is slowing down your pace. I know it feels counterintuitive because learners often think, if I speak faster, I'll sound fluent. But actually, rushing makes you more nervous and increases mistakes. Speaking a bit slower gives your brain time to think, and the listener perceives calmness and confidence.
Yes, and paired with that is using pauses intentionally. Don't be afraid of silence. Even a small pause before answering makes your speech sound thoughtful. For example, if someone asks your opinion in a meeting, pause for a second, then say, I see your point. I think we might approach it like this. That pause makes your answer feel deliberate and calm.
Another important tool is softening your language. This is something we touched on in the first topic, but it works perfectly here too. Words like could, might, perhaps, or phrases like I think make your ideas sound confident without being aggressive or hesitant. Instead of saying this won't work, you could say I think we might try another approach. It communicates the same idea, but calmly and politely.
Yes, and one technique I love is turning statements into questions. For example, instead of asserting, we should do this, you say, could we try this approach? It invites dialogue, reduces pressure, and makes your speech feel collaborative.
And here's a mental trick. Stop aiming for perfection, aim for clarity. Ask yourself, am I being understood? Rather than, did I say everything perfectly? This shift in focus immediately reduces overthinking and makes your speech more natural.
Also, don't underestimate the power of practice in low-pressure situations. Short daily conversations, ordering food, asking simple questions, or chatting with friends help your brain get used to speaking English without freezing. Each small success builds momentum.
And one more tip, visualize confidence before speaking. Take a deep breath, imagine yourself speaking calmly, and picture a positive response from the listener. Even if it feels silly at first, your brain starts operating as if you've already succeeded, reducing anxiety in the moment.
So, to summarize, the main strategies are: prepare key phrases, slow your pace, use pauses, soften your language, turn statements into questions, focus on clarity, practice daily, and visualize confidence.
If you apply just a few of these consistently, you'll notice your overthinking starts to melt away, and speaking English begins to feel natural instead of stressful.
And in the next chapter, we'll go through real-life examples so you can hear exactly how these strategies work in meetings, social situations, and daily life.
All right, now that we've covered strategies, let's see how they actually work in real life situations. Hearing examples makes everything click because you can hear how confident English sounds in action.
Yes, and we'll focus on three main scenarios: work situations, social interactions, and daily life. Let's start with work. Imagine you're in a meeting and want to suggest a new approach. Many learners hesitate or say, maybe this is wrong, and then stay quiet.
Exactly. With these strategies, you might say, I see where you're coming from, and I wonder if we could try a different approach. What do you think about testing this method? Here's what's happening. You're acknowledging the other person, softening your tone, making a suggestion, and ending with a question. It comes across as confident, respectful, and collaborative.
And pacing is important too. A slight pause after "I see where you're coming from" gives listeners time to process your acknowledgement. You're not rushing, and that pause communicates calmness.
Now, let's take a social example. Say you're at dinner with friends and someone suggests an activity you don't want to join. A direct response like, I don't want to do that, might feel blunt. Using confident English, you could say, that sounds fun, but I think I'll sit this one out. Would you like to do something else together?
Exactly. Notice how you're clear about your preference, but also collaborative. You've softened your language with "I think" and "would you like," and a small pause before the second sentence makes it sound thoughtful rather than rushed.
And for daily life situations, like ordering food or asking for help, many learners default to short, blunt commands like, give me this or I want that. That's understandable, but it can sound demanding. A confident alternative would be, could I have the chicken sandwich, please? Or would you be able to help me with this?
Right. And even though the words are simple, the tone, pacing, and politeness markers make all the difference. You sound calm, in control, and intentional, not nervous or demanding.
What's great about these examples is that they're repeatable across many situations. Meetings, casual conversations with friends, classroom discussions, customer interactions. They all use the same principles: acknowledge, soften, pause, and speak clearly.
And remember, overthinking is normal, even when applying these strategies. The key is to start speaking anyway, notice small wins, and gradually internalize the patterns. Confidence grows incrementally, not overnight.
Exactly. And here's a tip. Try one scenario per day. Maybe Monday is work, Wednesday is social, Friday is daily life. Apply one strategy in each conversation. Slow your pace, add a pause, or turn statements into questions. Over time, these small adjustments become second nature.
To summarize this chapter, listening to examples, practicing in real situations, and focusing on calm, clear communication is the fastest way to stop overthinking and speak confidently. These scenarios show you exactly how theory becomes practical.
And in the next chapter, we'll explore mental habits and mindset shifts that make confident English stick for the long term, not just in one conversation, but consistently over months and years.
All right, we've covered overthinking, practical strategies, and real-life examples. Now let's talk about mindset, because no matter how many strategies you know, if your mindset isn't aligned, overthinking will creep back in.
Absolutely. The first mental habit is accepting imperfection. Confident English isn't about flawless grammar or sounding like a native speaker. It's about being understood and expressing yourself clearly. When you let go of perfection, speaking becomes less stressful and your confidence grows naturally.
Exactly. I always tell learners, focus on clarity, not perfection. Even if you make a small mistake, most people won't notice, and the conversation keeps flowing. What matters is that your message lands.
The second habit is shifting your attention from yourself to the listener. Overthinking often happens because learners are too focused on how they sound. Instead, think, am I making my idea clear? Is this helping the other person? When your focus moves outward, nervousness drops and your speech becomes more natural.
Yes, and linked to that is the habit of reflection without judgment. After a conversation, instead of criticizing yourself, I messed up that sentence, ask, what went well? What could I try differently next time? This builds confidence steadily instead of creating self-doubt.
Another mindset shift is embracing repetition. Confidence doesn't appear overnight. You need consistent practice in low-pressure situations, daily interactions, short conversations, even speaking to yourself out loud. Over time, these small repetitions create muscle memory for calm, clear English.
Exactly. And visualization is powerful too. Before entering a conversation, take a few seconds to imagine yourself speaking clearly and calmly, and picture a positive response from the listener. Your brain starts operating as if you've already succeeded, which reduces anxiety in the moment.
And here's another subtle but important habit. Reward yourself for small wins. Maybe you used a pause effectively, rephrased a sentence smoothly, or asked a question confidently. Celebrate that. Confidence grows through positive reinforcement just as much as practice.
We should also talk about embracing mistakes as learning opportunities. Every small error isn't a failure, it's a signal. Ask yourself, what can I do differently next time? This prevents overthinking from turning mistakes into self-criticism, and instead turns them into growth.
Finally, remember that confidence compounds over time. Each conversation, each small improvement builds a foundation. Patience is key. Speak often, apply strategies consistently, and reflect thoughtfully. You'll notice that overthinking fades and speaking English becomes natural.
To wrap up, the mental habits for long-term confidence are: accept imperfection, focus on the listener, reflect without judgment, embrace repetition, visualize success, reward small wins, and treat mistakes as growth opportunities. Combine these with the strategies and examples from earlier chapters, and confident English becomes a skill you truly own.
Exactly. Speak calmly, clearly, and intentionally. Apply these habits, and overthinking will no longer hold you back.
Thanks for listening to this full episode. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and we'll explore even more practical English in future episodes, one conversation at a time.